Welcome on in, WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Appreciate everyone subscribing, following, of course, listening in to the podcast, and of course our video feed, 94 WIP, the YouTube page. Subscribe there. You'll get all our podcasts immediately when they go live. And of course, Tucker Bagley joins me on the video podcast to give his take on the biggest story of the day. And today, it's unfortunately for the Sixers. It is always unfortunately for the Sixers. It never feels good talking about the Sixers. It's Joel Embiid and his comments, which actually happened a few days ago with Maverick Carter, and they came out yesterday. We reacted a little bit yesterday on WIP. And, of course, I want to give my full thoughts here on WIP Daily with Joel Embiid and his assertion that he wants to win a championship, whether that be in Philadelphia or somewhere else. And for the first time, really throwing something out there that eventually this could lead to Joel Embiid not being in Philadelphia. I think this is inevitable. I think we've been trending towards this for a little while now, and I have a lot of frustration towards all the parties involved here, but specifically Joel Embiid. And look, he's allowed to feel whatever he wants to feel. He's allowed to say whatever he wants to say. He's a grown man, and whatever. Like if he's starting to wonder if his career here is going to end in a championship, he's not alone. Because 2 years ago I said they're not going to win a title with this guy here. But what's frustrating is listening to him talk about it and just the abdicating of responsibility that he seems to have, that he wants to win here. And it's almost the way he framed it. It's everybody else's fault, that it's, not his, it's everybody else's fault. And I'm not going to pretend that the Sixers haven't made mistakes around him. They have roster decisions, guys they've kept, guys they've traded away, moves they've made. And it's been a lot of mistakes in trying to build a championship team around Joel Embiid. That's obvious. But what's also obvious is the common denominator in all of this, from front office to players to coaches, there's only one that has been here since the beginning of this when they drafted this guy, and that is Joel Embiid. He's the common denominator. And even if you want to take out those first few years because of injuries, and you want to just say from the first time they made the playoffs, when their first playoff trip happened with Joel Embiid to now, that 6-year span, he's the only one that has been here through it all. So every year when they lose, he's the common denominator. And I have yet to find the series where Joel Embiid was truly great in the NBA playoffs, ever. He's had some moments. He's had some games here and there, but not pillar to post greatness by Joel Embiid, especially when you get beyond the first round. They could beat up the Nets in the first round. Nobody cares. Second round is where it usually gets real in the NBA playoffs, and Joel Embiid has often been just a poor version of himself in those spots. So to hear that, it's frustrating. And I actually, feel bad for all of you out there. And I'm sure in a few minutes, Tucker will continue this. But I feel bad for everyone out there who's defended Joel Embiid for all these years. And there's been a lot of different steps along the way, whether it be his play, whether it be the time that he basically shushed the crowd. Everybody said, shut the bleep up. I think he mouthed it that night that we reacted on WIP those years ago when he heard some criticism, and then he fired back. Whatever it's been, through every step, Joel Embiid has had many defenders. And I think part of it is he's a good player, and he's a homegrown player and a player that was drafted here. So you want to defend him. You want to believe in him. You want to believe this is going to work. I totally understand that. But I think the other reason why Joel Embiid has so many defenders is he's been looked at, and I was going to say figuratively, literally attached himself to the name The Process. Right? The process was polarizing. So I've always felt like because he's the attachment to the process, to Sam Hinkie, all the emotion from that side of the argument, and I was for it. I was on that side. They should tank. They should do all that stuff that in the ancient history now. But I was on it. I was on board with that. But I think a lot of the defense of Joel Embiid stems just from that. Like, he's the symbol of this. He's the reason for this. It's all going to work. Everyone that thought this was the right way was right. And we want to defend that to the end, right? It's almost like this Joel Embiid has become the hill you die on, in some sectors of the fan base. And I understand, but I feel bad. I feel bad if you're still there. I mean, I believed in the process. I'm off Embiid. I've separated the two. One's an idea. One is a theory. One is a thought exercise. One is basketball experiment. The other one is a person that has not lived up to his billing in the postseason year after year. It's just the reality of him. But I feel bad if you're a big Joel Embiid defender, because this guy has never figured it out. He's never grown up since he got in the NBA. Is he a better player now than he used to be? Of course he is. He's developed into an MVP of the league, which is incredible. There's very few guys that have ever done that. I think it's like 35 or 36 players who've ever won an NBA MVP award. So he's in a rare group of talented individuals. He's also in a one-of-one group in which NBA MVPs that have never got past the second round. There's just one, and his name is Joel Embiid. So you factor all this in, the ups, the downs, the great, the not so great, and you think about all the defense of this guy, and then I thought it was spitting in everyone's face, saying what he said. Look, if he wants to have those conversations behind closed doors with Daryl Morey about his future, about now feeling some uncertainty, that's fine. He won't be the first. He won't be the last NBA player to have those opinions, feelings, whatever. But to throw it out there like that, I just thought it was a slap in the face to the fan base, especially the sector of the fan base that really believes in this guy. I also think he's just completely taking himself away from the responsibility here of his fault in why this team has not won a championship or really even come close to a championship. So it's frustrating because the Sixers are a mess. They're a mess from top to bottom. And, I think the Sixers missed the boat on this Embiid thing 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and maybe even a year ago. But let's just say 3 weeks ago. At some point, you have to have a realization what you're doing is not working. It's the old line, you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. It's insanity. The Sixers are insane to expect this thing to turn into a championship team. I believe that. It's not going to happen. So they could have changed it. They could have tried, let's just say when the season ended, to gauge Embiid's value in the trade market and blow the whole thing up, keep Maxey, and trade everyone else away. They could have done that. From, a lot of great reporters in the NBA, locally and nationally, they didn't do that. I mean, there was no chatter really about trading Joel Embiid. So now they're on his timeline. And the fear I had a month ago when I said blow it up, and the fear I have now is that Joel Embiid's timeline will not be good for the Sixers. And what I mean by that is right now he's the MVP of the league. Right now he's relatively healthy. We know he had the knee sprain in the playoffs, but it wasn't like an ACL tear or a broken foot or anything you'd kind of worry about into next season. So he is relatively healthy. He just finished an MVP season. I don't think executives in the NBA, really all sports, are as championship-centric as we are. I think they're more black and white statistics, plus minus analytics, whatever you want to use. Like they think of things in a more global picture. We think of it as he's a loser, he's not. So I think there'd be big value for Joel Embiid. Heck, Rudy Gobert got like 4 number 1 picks a year ago, and Joel is so much of a better basketball player. So could have been the opportunity here this offseason, before free agency, right when it was all fresh, around the draft, to gauge the trade value of Embiid, blow the Sixers up, and rebuild the whole thing while he was at probably peak value. That is just going to diminish. It's like an automobile. Now Joel Embiid will only diminish in value. He reached his peak of his career, physically, accolades, all that. So now he's only going to go down. And it feels like we're heading to a season where everyone's disgruntled, whether Harden's here, he's not here, he's fat, he's not fat, he's trying, he's not. I don't know. It seems like a disaster waiting to happen. They haven't moved Tobias yet. Daryl Morey spends more time on Twitter than he does actually making moves for the Sixers. And now you have Embiid sending the first arrow out there that maybe one day I want to be out. And, of course, all the sharks are circling, saying the Knicks, the Knicks, the Knicks. That's been the rumor in the NBA for like a year now. So you play it out. I imagine they're going to somewhat run this thing back. Joel's not going to be happy all year because either it's a fat suit Harden or Harden's traded for pennies in the dollar, and he's like, you traded away my second best player. What am I going to do? And a year from now, Joel Embiid likely doesn't have as great of a season, probably isn't as healthy when the year ends or maybe throughout the season. The Sixers flame out again, whether it be the first or the second round, and next summer he asks for a trade. And they won't get as much back for him a year from now, as they would a year ago. There's less time left on his contract. He's a year older, probably not having as great of a season. So I think the Sixers messed this up. They almost dared Embiid to kind of go down this path. And Embiid, of course, takes the bait. And, then the whole Twitter thing, which just, dude, stop tweeting. Stop saying you're a troll. You're a grown man. Like, if you believe something, just stand on it. Just stand on it. If you don't, you don't. I'm just, frustration has gotten to the point where I can't handle this Sixers team. It's always nonsense more than it is substance with this basketball team. I'm frustrated at Joel. Let's see what Tucker thinks. Tucker's long been a Joel Embiid supporter, and this is the latest. He has to stand up for his guy who I guess he was just trolling everyone, Tucker.
Yeah, that's a tough one to follow. And I think after they lost to the Celtics, I said I was done defending him. But I don't see the issue here, right? And this tends to happen a lot with Joel Embiid in this fan base. And you mentioned when he shushed everybody, and I thought it was a complete non-issue, right? Like, you boo the guy, he goes out, puts up 30 and 15, he can shush you, right? Like, he can do that. And maybe now it's a little different because he fell flat on his face in the playoffs once again. But the discourse around this team this entire offseason has been how poorly run they are, how Daryl Morey is this fraud and a scam artist, and James Harden's going to show up in a fat suit, or James Harden is just grifting the team, trying to make $45 million for the next half decade, and the Sixers are cooked, right? Like 3 or 4 weeks ago, everyone was saying, well, no point in watching the Sixers this year, they're going to stink. And then Joel Embiid comes out and says, well, maybe I'll win in Philadelphia or maybe somewhere else. I don't know. Like, that isn't he just agreeing with everybody else? Like, I think he's just as frustrated as everybody. And I understand that he's part of the reason why the fan base is frustrated. And there's, certainly a bit of a lack of accountability from him, because he certainly is culpable in this entire mess. If he just plays better in, game 6 or game 7 against Boston, maybe we're not having this discussion and we're talking about, next steps and building and moving forward. But if I were Joel Embiid and I was sitting there and I'm watching James Harden and Daryl Morey, tweet and go through Shams and Woj and talk about, well, he wants to play. No, he doesn't. And there was a report yesterday that, the Sixers think Joel Embiid's like Kobe Bryant and he's going to stay with the Sixers for the rest of his life, and he wants to remain here. That may very well be true, but I mean, at some point, I think he has to get just as fed up as everybody else. And like I said, I fully understand that he's culpable in all this, and he's the reason why they've struggled, and he's the common denominator in all of their second round exits. But yeah, if I were Joel Embiid and I'm looking at the roster right now, and you lost like 3 bench guys and you're replacing them with Pat Beverly and Mo Bamba, and James Harden's going to show up out of shape and disinterested, and I'm going to be stuck playing with him until like mid-December when you trade him for 3 more bench guys. Yeah, I could be sitting there and thinking, I think the writing's on the wall. I'm not sure if I'm long here from Philadelphia.
And I understand that. And again, him feeling that isn't my issue. I think any player of Joel's stature on a team that continues to lose and not get close to a championship is probably going to feel like maybe it's just not going to happen. And I feel that. I don't think it's going to happen with Joel Embiid here. The difference is, and maybe it's unfair, I don't care. You can't say it like that and then take it back and pretend you're kidding, because you play with people's emotions. Again, especially the people who defend Joel Embiid and like Joel Embiid and believe he can win a championship here. I just can't ever imagine Jalen Hurts saying that. I just can't. I can't imagine Bryce Harper saying that. And Bryce Harper might think it. Bryce Harper's probably thought before last year, I don't know if I'm ever going to win in Philadelphia. This thing is screwed up. We can't put a bullpen out there. We can't fill out a bench. We can't fill out a lineup. Like, we have holes. I'm sure he's thought that, or wondered it deep down. You just can't say it and expect the reaction to be anything but, hey, man, we've supported you, we've embraced you, and now you're saying this. And the other part that just frustrates me, and I come back to this a lot, yes, the Sixers have made mistakes around Joel Embiid, a ton of them. But Joel Embiid hasn't carried his weight in the biggest moments. If you go back to some of those series where LeBron James lost with the Cleveland Cavaliers early in his career, and he was putting up 35, 10-10. I mean, he was the best player in the world, and he had nothing around him. And when he went up against juggernauts, like let's say the Celtics, it just wasn't fair. He couldn't will his team past a team of 3 Hall of Famers, and it was understandable. But you're like, all right, well, he's doing his part, and it's really because he doesn't have enough around him. Joel's not doing his part. So it falls on deaf ears where you say, I don't know, I want to win a championship. I don't know if it's going to be here. You're part of why this doesn't work. It's almost like he doesn't see that. He doesn't acknowledge it. And it's the same thing like after game 7. Me and James can't do it alone. Like, you guys played bad in that game. It was actually your teammates keeping you in the game. That's the stuff that is frustrating. The Sixers are frustrating. Joel is. And I just thought his comments were wrong. I mean, I just thought to say those things and then to jokingly walk him back is a sign of Joel Embiid's continued immaturity. I think we all know how this is going to end. He's going to ask for a trade one day. I don't think it's going to end up like Kobe, who actually did ask for a trade from the Bulls at one point, to the Bulls at one point. Didn't happen. I don't think it ends up like Dirk. I think he gets traded likely a year from now. They do 1 year of this. They try with Nick Nurse. Whatever Daryl Morey does with the roster when he's not tweeting, they'll figure out. And a year from now, this likely ends with a Joel Embiid trade request and just a career that should have had nothing but great vibes because of the story is going to end in Philadelphia with nothing but bad vibes. I appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following the podcast. Of course, our video feed, 94 WIP, our YouTube page. Thanks for watching. We'll talk tomorrow on WIP Daily.